Hi everyone, it's Josh here. I'm here with Geoff and Dawn from Cohesion Press, who are based in a really, really interesting building in Beechworth, of all places. So, how are we going to start with? It's been a pretty big couple of weeks, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, very big couple of weeks since the news broke.
Yeah. So, we won't dilly-dally too much. We've got a fair bit to talk about today. So, Cohesion Press, maybe for those that aren't familiar with it, do we just want to give a short chronology of how that came to be, what it is, and then we'll talk about everything that's been happening.
We're an Australian small press publisher. We focus in the horror genre initially and then micro-focused into military action-based horror. Started in 2013 and we've grown ever since.
Well, that was succinct. That's good. I'm sure you've been telling that story a fair bit lately. So,
yeah, the old elevator pitch.
So just so the listeners obviously know maybe what each role is in the business, is it co-written material or is it illustrated by one of you guys?
We don't write anything. We publish other writers.
Okay.
A good small press will not publish their own work. They'll publish other people's work as a commercial enterprise. Dawn is an editor and copy editor. I do editing, layout, internal book block layout. I'm the main networker for most of the authors. I've had that network for 20 years now. And I'm a writer by trade as well prior to that. So I merged over from writing to publishing others.
Okay. And Dawn, just so the listeners know, you're obviously the co-director of Cohesion Press, but do you have any, for the lack of a better term, I guess, creative jobs the same, or is just so we have some context on where everyone's coming from?
It depends on which, title or which call out we give.
Okay.
We usually have a discussion about what the next theme's going to be, what it's going to be sort of based around, book title. We usually, with the cover artist, the three of us usually say what sort of general thing is, and so I'm sort of a more in the background person.
I think anyone who's done anything creative, I think at any level, particularly we'll get into a level that's starting to accelerate, background workers, particularly good ones, are almost the most crucial thing in the operation a lot of the time. So,
oh, yes.
And you're sounding rather awesome on that microphone too, Dawn, which is that's pleasant. It's yeah, so not all mics suit all people, believe it or not. Some, but you're sounding good. So I guess we may as well just cut straight to it. Do you want to take us through let's go back 2 years approximately when things started to happen, and then I guess we'll talk about the quote-unquote NDA that maybe you were under, and then maybe what's happened in the last few weeks, because it's it's really impressive. I haven't heard anything quite like it, particularly locally, ever.
Yeah, it is a very unusual outcome for any small press, even any medium press. We started publishing a specific title of anthologies, Snafu, a series of military horror short story anthologies, which was what I always wanted to publish with Cohesion. And we released our first in 2014. And then in late 2016, I got an email from Zach Hardy, who is the personal assistant of Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool over in Hollywood, saying that he wanted to Tim wanted to get in touch with me to discuss something. And I thought, it's just another one of those email scams. You know, everyone gets those.
The Nigerian prince.
Yeah, exactly. The Nigerian prince, in this case, in Hollywood. So I did a bit of research and the email address matched and the information I could find on the website of Blur Studio, which is Tim's business, matched, and I replied. And it was Zach from Blur Studio, and it was Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, who wanted to work with us.
Incredible. So, obviously, Geoff, you received the first bit of correspondence. Can you just take us through that first conversation with Dawn as to how you brought that up with her? And what was your feelings, Dawn? Were you like, you're getting scammed? Sorry, honey, that's not happening.
Hey, Dawn, remember watching Deadpool? Yeah, I guess. Well, the director of it just contacted us. He wants to work with Cohesion.
And it was me, right.
Yeah. I think, in your defence, I think most people probably would have right at that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just, that doesn't happen, you know?
Yeah.
Small presses who put out titles that sell well but not phenomenally well, like the big five publishers, don't get that sort of contact. It just doesn't happen, yet it did.
Yeah, so I know there has been a few articles and news stories lately, but can you talk us through the specifics of maybe what happened just after that period? Because that obviously was covered under a non-disclosure. Can you talk about what the expectations were of you guys and how things maybe rolled out? Was there a lot of communication? Did you actually have to verify these people were genuinely who they were?
Oh, absolutely. I exchanged emails a number of times. I was told that at the same time that Netflix would be contacting me with contracts for a number of stories that had been selected for an upcoming project that they were working on together, Tim Miller, David Fincher and Netflix. And sure enough, we were shopping in Wangaratta one day and the phone rang with a weird series of numbers on the screen and I answered it and, "Hello, I'm Zarin from Netflix in California. How are you?"
Jeez.
"I'm good, thank you. This is really weird, but cool, but
Desperately
weird."
looking at your phone, I've got 5 bars, yes.
Yeah. Do not move. Don't lose reception. Sit down and hope nobody comes up to talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, that's just... And how far along in the background were the discussions? I mean, you might not have been privy to this, but Tim Miller, Netflix, and was it David Fincher?
David Fincher.
So an absolute murderer's row of genre storytelling. How far along were their conversations about what they thought could happen with the properties you were representing and publishing?
David and Tim had been working together for years. They knew each other quite well, as far as I understand. They wanted to work on an anthology collection of animated shorts. They loved the whole 80s heavy metal magazine that was then made into a movie of short story sort of things, and they wanted to redo that for this decade. And they went everywhere looking for somebody who would take that from them, and they found them in Netflix. They had already negotiated the series, they'd negotiated the first season, and they were at the process of looking for stories. Now, Tim was a big fan of ours. We didn't realise it until we were contacted, but he's read every snafu that we've put out and he loves the stories. He actually gave us a quote that said when he first started reading the first book, by the time he got to the third story in there, he was so excited because he realised that, in his words, these guys got it. They knew what made a good story and that our tastes were similar to his tastes in storytelling.
Yeah, incredible. So we won't get into the machinations of how the deal works because it's probably a lot of numbers and a lot of boredom and probably not really appropriate for an audio podcast. But as things moved forward, was there a particular moment where you just thought, okay, this is the real deal?
It was always surreal to me anyway. I never truly, I think, believed that it was going to happen and we were going to see animations of our stories on Netflix. I was involved to a large degree through the production of. I was given access to work in progress for all of the stories in the series, not just our own, because I was actually also contracted to Tim to work with him, helping him select stories for season 2 from all sorts of sources. I was literally paid to read story collections by Tim Miller.
Excellent.
And I saw all those. I saw our stories coming together, but it was still hard to believe. And I don't think I'll really truly believe it until March the 15th when it actually shows on Netflix.
Yeah. And just so for the people listening, I don't normally go too much into the story of the mind stuff, but just seeing how genuinely happy you two are about everything that's happening and you're not slightly jaded by the process or anything. It's unusual to get to succeed at any level in the thing that you specifically love to do or have interest in. Big comedians take radio jobs and get worn out doing morning radio. They don't always get to be famous stand-ups, well, at least in this country. If you're in a band, you generally have to shift your music slightly to suit a broader audience. You never get to make the record you want. And movies, they're never quite the movie once the studios had their way. But it sounds like you were so heavily involved that you were seeing step by step how things were progressing, and just judging by how happy you two come across, it is a good representation of the stories, and they haven't been morphed too much? I mean, they've obviously probably been improved, but there's
Our writers are so damn good at what they do. We've got such strong relationships with the writers, and we go through such a good editing program with such good editors that the stories were perfect for what Tim wanted.
Yeah,
there was not a lot of change in the end results. They tell the story that we published.
Well, you're obviously a good editor because you basically just summed up what I said in about 30 words there. As regular listeners of all the shows I've ever done know, I tend to go really down rabbit holes. So it sometimes takes me a while to get there. Yeah, so maybe if we go back to, can we just talk a little bit about what it was like to not be able to talk about this? Like, Dawn, can you take that one? Can you? You must have been almost exploding to tell somebody.
For me, it was just like business as usual. We just get on with things.
Yeah.
But for Geoff being the main figurehead, it was really hard for him to bite his tongue and yeah.
Okay, so we will talk a little bit about what you guys do day to day, which may give some more context to Dawn's comment there about just getting on with things, because you're also doing something that takes a fair lot of work, running your own business. So,
a lot of work.
So I guess, do you think, and maybe it's a good place to bring that in, we're inside one of the buildings where the Asylum Ghost Tours is, well, this is where it's run from.
This is the foyer where the tours begin, yes.
One of the famous ghost tours. I'd heard of it 1,000 times living in Albury-Wodonga, which is, 45 minutes away, and I'm sure everyone knows about it from the area. It's a huge operation, from what I can tell.
It is. It's one of the biggest, most renowned ghost tours companies in the country.
Do you think having something of this scale on the side made, well, I'm assuming just the day-to-day running of a big operation would bring you back down to earth on occasion to, hey, this is real life still happening over here. But also, do you think maybe for you, Dawn, was that a way to keep your focus on something that was also, exciting and gratifying? Building the business is probably hard if you just got nothing else happening not to tell people.
Partly it's my personality as well. I'm a very logical, step-by-step, I have to do this then.
Okay.
So I think it was easier for me to sort of, I can never say it, put it aside. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Put it aside and just work on day-to-day things.
Yeah, well, that's a skill that I've never truly been able to master myself. I tend to live in the future, so I don't know if, Geoff, you're the same as that, but every little thing that was happening about something that was going to happen I would have exploded wanting to tell people. So.
It was so hard.
Yeah.
So damn hard. 2 years of not being able to talk about it.
I actually feel a little naughty that we're talking about it now because we've had to stay quiet for so long.
I was going to, that actually, it's strange you say that. I've got that on my note. So let's talk about, obviously, there's reasons why any studio wants things not to be spoken about because there's so much intellectual investment and financial investment. And also, if you've got something original happening, you don't want the world to know about it until it's pretty much ready to go.
That's it, a very tightly controlled marketing program.
Yeah. So just day to day, what was the communication like with, okay, it's looking like it's going to be X date, or this is how far in the future potentially it will be ready to talk about? Did you have any insight into when that was going to happen?
They kept us in the dark across the board in that regard. We had no idea when it was going to be released. We had no idea when we could talk about it. The authors still can't talk about their individual stories, so they're still limited in what they can say on social media and in the news until 3 days after the series is released. Netflix want complete, utter 100% control over marketing because they know their marketing. They know what works. They know where to focus, and they want to have a control over everything that's spoken about up to 3 days after release date.
Yeah, okay. So obviously, well, that probably means that the fact that you're able to talk about it more freely puts you in even a slightly more, I don't want to use the word privileged position, but it must be good to be able to finally
weight off, yes.
Talk about it, be excited about it. And just with the authors, how much were they, obviously you were publishing their work, so to a certain degree you were the arbiters of taste when it came to their work and you were representing that. Did they have any creative input at any point, or were they taking the finished story and then it was up to you to be that, liaison on the story or however involved you were? Was there anything going back to the authors?
No. They went through the editing process with us and Then the final version of the story was published within the Snafu volume it was contained in. And those stories were bought as is, and then Netflix and Blur Studio brought in screenwriters to adapt those to visuals.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that. That's interesting before we move on maybe to talk about Asylum. When someone hears that they've purchased stories off Cohesion or licensed the stories, how they are represented in, what do we call it? What form would you say that your material comes out in? Graphic novel form, or how do you describe it?
Our publications.
Yeah, your publications.
They're anthologies of military horror short stories.
Yeah, which is a pretty succinct title once again. That's pretty awesome. So they're not screenplays though.
No, they're short stories to be read.
Yeah, so did you have any experience with what a screenplay was leading up to that? Did you know how something became a screenplay from source material, or was that
I had some idea. It's covered in the course that we both did, a diploma in professional writing and editing, and I've actually adapted one of my own short stories for comic graphic novel format, which, while not the same, is similar because it's a visual representation of a written story.
Were they, I mean, we don't need to talk about who they brought in to do that, but did you have any recognition of the people that were put onto the project?
I knew some of the names, most definitely. There's some big names involved.
Yeah, because that must have been exciting.
Directors, screenwriters, everything, actors.
Yeah, I'm a massive genre TV geek. So in the world of movies, the writers are pushed well and truly down the pecking order, whereas in the world of television, they are king.
Yes.
Particularly if they're skilled at adapting source material because we all know that quite often, particularly in the movie world, source material can end up being mutated into something that's not representative by the time it's on the screen. So
very much so.
So you must have been just pumping your fist when you saw it. Obviously, Netflix are the current kings.
They are the kings of new content. $1.5 billion spent on original content last financial year.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And to be putting out that much original stuff and for most of it to be good, I'm not sure maybe HBO can claim that, but they're obviously releasing so much less at any one time. Yeah, the strike rate is exceptional.
Very much.
So did you actually get, at any point, Geoff or Dawn, did you get to see how the screenplays were progressing, like what they looked like in screenplay form, or was that...
No, we just saw more animation.
Yeah, okay. So for someone that's sitting at home that doesn't know about animation, were we talking about maybe a storyboard or...
Storyboards, very rough animation
sketches
of the moving stories, but very basic imagery and such, with direction written at the top left of the screen, like running footsteps heard here, things like that.
That must have still been pretty good.
It was.
So Love, Death and Robots was, in my research, that's the name of not just your part of the stories that you guys had licensed, but that's the entire project.
That's the name of the graphic anthology series, yes.
Yeah, that Netflix are producing. So do you have any insight into how many other story creators were brought onto the project besides yourselves? Were they?
There are 15 other stories apart from our 3 that are in season 1.
Yep.
And we've sold rights to a 4th story already that was intended to be in season 1, but for some reason it wasn't, and will be in season 2 if season 2 goes ahead. So please watch the show.
Yes. So I'll re-emphasise that. Love, Death and Robots when it comes out. So is there any idea of an actual official, it hits Netflix globally date?
March the 15th.
Oh, March the 15th. Wow, okay.
They're actually doing a countdown on Instagram, isn't it?
Yes, 18 days of Love, Death and Robots on Instagram.
We might just move off that now. Obviously, it's huge for the area too to know that there's creative people out there that are doing things on a global level. Like, it doesn't often happen. So that's really impressive. So.
It's really hard to sell visual rights for any written material, let alone short stories. So, we feel really well represented in that.
And I guess it's a bit of an avant-garde kind of move for Netflix to move into something that doesn't have like a place on streaming at the moment. There isn't really that type of storytelling on any of Amazon or any of the big networks. So they're doing something that hasn't happened on that kind of platform before.
But isn't that Netflix? They take chances, they take risks, and they experiment to find out what their viewers want and work from there.
Yeah.
That's why they're so successful.
That is, yeah. Very creatively oriented as much as they're into their numbers. So, yeah, certainly, it's my favourite source of television at the moment. So we might just talk about Asylum Ghost Tours. People that are listening to this show's the first podcast I've ever done that's locally oriented. So Wagga, Albury and Wangaratta are in a big circle.
A lot of people would already know of us then.
Yeah, so it's probably, they might not know that you guys are behind it, but it's probably even more well known than the publishing arm of the
I would say so, yes.
So can you just take me through just a regular day, and then we might just talk about the specifics of how, this particular room works or the tour itself, see where we get to. But
normal day, we put out tours 7 nights a week. We put out ghost tours, we put out paranormal investigations, which are long-term for ghost hunting with equipment.
Yeah.
And we just take people through this beautiful haunted place.
Don't forget history tours and
history
photography tours.
History tours on weekends and photography tours for visual artists anytime.
I've never actually done a ghost tour, but it's something that I've always thought about doing. Just I haven't really ever had a group of friends that have been particularly interested in the idea all at the same time. And now that I'm getting to know you guys, I probably will try one out. I'm not particularly a massive fan of being scared, but I think this is an experience that would be interesting to have. So I've got a couple of things here, and this is just stuff off the Facebook page, and I thought this is very funny. So these are the names of 3 of your more popular videos. Scared shitless, language warning. Oh God, what's behind me? Language warning. And my favourite, help. So you get an idea of what's going on here. That stuff's good stuff. Do you get people that on a daily basis, obviously, the point of the tour is, I'm assuming, is it to make, what are you going for with a ghost tour? Is it to make people uncomfortable? Is it to make them terrified? Is it to give them chills? Is there anything that is a common experience for most people that take a ghost tour?
We put the tours out to teach and to give people an experience that they will remember.
Yeah. Sorry, Geoff, when you say you're teaching people, when Dawn was saying that she's highly logical, my brain kind of floats between 2 modes. There's a creative me over here, but I can also sink into that real skeptic mode where I'm just highly logical. So when you're saying you're trying to teach, is it that you're teaching people that they're not as comfortable and as brave as they think they are, or is it about actual history of the buildings?
History of the buildings, history of mental health treatment, how beautiful this facility is and how scary it can be at night.
Well, I turned up here and it's let's just put it out there, it's a beautiful part of the world, but it's also a beautiful day outside. And as soon as we came in and a lot of the lights were off, I was thinking, this is not quite as nice as outside when it comes to the feeling that you have. So it must be an interesting experience to be on the other side, as in the hosting role, of seeing people that have different degrees of, if I was in skeptical mode, or I'm sure you've got really skeptical people, I'm not scared of anything, what are you talking about, blah, blah, and they're probably really hard to deal with for the first 2 minutes until they pee their pants. So.
We pay our guides a bonus if somebody actually physically urinates as well.
That's a good incentive.
It is.
So, just getting back, what is the common experience for someone that takes an Asylum Ghost Tour? What do they come out at the other end telling you that as... I'm assuming it's not like watching, just for people who've never been, it's not like watching a horror movie where you get to the end and you think that's over. What do they come out with?
A lot of them are just so amazed at the architecture, for one.
Okay.
For saying it was built 151 years ago, it's still in great condition, but you've got little ornate, banisters and the granite stairs and the lantern features like this one above us now.
It's amazing in here. Yeah, if you guys are okay, I might get a little quick sweeping video of this to put with the podcast, because it's amazing in this room.
I think they're just so amazed because over in the building that looks really old and decrepit, it just wasn't rendered with the rest. It's still got your original 1860s ward system, so people get to have a look at what the reality really was back in those days.
Yeah, okay.
So, a lot of them are blown away with the history, but also some nights can be creepier than others.
Okay, can you just describe one of those? What would what sets the scene when you turn up for work? How do you know that? Is it a certain kind of weather? Is it the
Totally unpredictable.
full moon, or is
You
it
cannot predict.
just a certain group at a certain vibe? It just takes off, and
Once the sun goes down, it's always a different feel at this place every night of the week.
okay,
It's always different.
yeah.
It's never comfortable, really, for that, especially for believers.
So, I mean, it's going to sound probably a little bit redundant, given that I think. How long have you been doing this for? I'll just start.
3 years.
3 years. I knew it was multiple years. Do you ever just surprise yourself at getting a little bit creeped out?
Always.
Oh, hell yeah.
I have to go out and do those live feed videos that you read the titles of. I'm out in those buildings by myself in the dark, holding a phone
I
up
should have
toward my
mentioned that
face.
too. These aren't videos of the tours. These
No.
are like little,
No.
almost
little
like
ghost hunt snippets.
little ghost hunt snippets, and they are actually pretty terrifying. So,
Yeah, you try being out there by yourself because I'm holding the phone up.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
even though
Geoff, I wouldn't be.
the screen is light in my eyes, I can't see anything
yeah, right.
that's in front of me. Anything could be happening, and sometimes you can hear things happening.
Yeah.
Footsteps walking towards you.
So, this might be me buffering myself against a future embarrassing moment where I just run off and jump back in my car and drive away. But do you often, or have you ever had someone who just said, "No, I'm out"?
Regularly.
Not that we want to, make it a character trait of us on it or anything like that, but can you pick who might have trouble? It's
Nope.
just, that's what I find most fascinating about the whole thing, is that, to me, there's certain things in life that aren't dangerous but can bring you down to a base human level. And this seems like one of those things that would equalise a lot of people of different personalities into a certain level of fear.
It's like all horror, really. It's like horror movies. It's like going on sideshows or the roller coasters. It's like reading a story. It's like going on a ghost tour. It's controlled fear.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in a situation that renders you scared, but it's a controlled fear because you're not at any real risk.
Yeah, and that can also be a circular thing of, why am I so scared? Like, there is no risk, but I am scared, and then you can start think, like, that's how my brain works.
I think it's just the unknown.
Yes.
We've
Yeah.
all got a fear of the unknown.
I know watching certain things, and it's weird. I remember one instance of being incredibly terrified was that my favourite show growing up was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and there was a silent episode, and just these beings, they were just floating along the street outside a guy's house, and he looks out the window and they just both turn their head and look at him.
Ugh.
And I mean, Joss Whedon was doing original things in every episode back then, but I'm not sure there'd ever been a silent episode on TV during the period of TV when it had audio. It would have been at least 60 years. But I was thinking, why is that so scary? Nothing's happening. There's not even any music really to go along with this. It's dead silent. And that feeling came out of nowhere. So I'm assuming that's happening for everybody on these tours, that regardless how they come in, they're all like,
It's a matter of understanding how tension works
yeah.
and giving people the opportunity
Because you're not
to
just
be...
walking people through old buildings, and that's not what's causing it. It's a certain way that, I mean, this place has a lot to do with it, but there must be a way to host to get the most out of
The
fear.
place talks for itself. We take people through,
Yeah.
tell a few ghost stories and local myths and legends and a lot of the history, and the building does the rest for us. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Okay, I'm actually pushing time a little bit, so
All good.
thank you so much for joining me. It's really amazing what's happening, and yeah, I'll get this out, and then hopefully you'll get a few more ghost tours and sell some material, and also have some more people watching Netflix. So what can people do on day one when it comes out?
Watch the series. Netflix has, and tell your friends how much you like it, and share on social media.
So just lastly, before we go, Geoff, Dawn, are you guys waiting to day one to watch it yourselves?
Oh, yeah, because it's not all animated by the one people.
Oh, no.
It's-
Different animator, different director, different actors for every single episode.
Wow.
It's
Range-
global, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is. It's global animators. There are Russians that have animated, Russian companies that have animated some, European, other North American, South American. It's across the globe. There are everything from 2D basic cartoons through to 3D CGI, ultra realist. You couldn't tell the difference.
Well, it's fantastic, and yeah, congratulations once again. Okay, thank you for joining me on Punching Sideways. I was here with Geoff and Dawn from Cohesion Press and the Asylum Ghost Tours in Beechworth, Victoria. So
Being a
thank
pleasure.
you, and yeah, good luck with the future with the Netflix.
Thank you.
Catch ya.